All right. Bungie was recently interviewed in regards to the success and failures of Act 3 of Revenant. They give a full breakdown, at least narratively, of their decisions with Act 3, and I wanted to read this for you because the community opinions have been very split. We have some people that were enjoying the finale of Act 3, how the story came to an end, and others criticizing it pretty heavily. We had a video we recently talked about, which was from My Name is Bife, and he said that he was pretty unhappy with the narrative decisions and how Act 3 ended. And so we have kind of mixed reviews. Feel free to comment down below what you felt about it, and let's see what Bungie has to say themselves. Your cake is trash, nobody wants to eat it. At a tough time for Destiny 2, Bungie drops an exotic mission promising vampire vibes, a cool shotgun, and a finale with fight. Okay, this comes to us from Games Radar. Some Destiny 2 players are, we can fairly say, not in the highest spirits. That's an understatement. Familiar events, RNG frustrations, player count woes, shallow loot pools, and endless bug complaints, and trials cheaters, and the list goes on. Have blunted community sentiment. That's especially true for this episode. After the all-time high of the Final Shape's release, folks could use a little pick-me-up. With Act 3 of Episode 2, Revenant, Bungie's rolled out a new exotic mission called Kel's Fall. It got a slick exotic shotgun called Slayer's Fang, more of the vampire energy players have been hoping to see this episode, which is a fair criticism. We thought things were going to be a little more vampiric this episode. I do like Slayer's Fang quite a bit though, and I actually like the vampire theme of things. I think that's a cool theme for Bungie to tap into, or a kind of in-between era, where we're in between the end of Final Shape and the beginning of Frontiers, so I don't mind there being a vampire-themed period of time here. And some long-awaited narrative climax. Obviously, there's some loose ends. The goal of this era, right, we're talking about that in-between era, the goal of this time period right now is to close off some of the loose ends that were created from the Light and Darkness saga. Right, throughout the last 10 years of story, lore, narrative, everything, right? There's been some loose ends, and so this is a good time for Bungie to sort of tie off these loose ends and put a bow on them, so that way we can watch people fly off into the sunset, aka Aramis, right? And then we can move on to the next narrative, right? Frontiers, and all of the exciting new things that we're going to figure out and discover with that. A fresh mission to run with the clan is a good way to get me to log in, and I do love an exotic shotgun. I don't know the staying power it will have, and this update definitely isn't a cure-all, but it is a welcome shot of stuff to do and see. For the mission's release, I spoke to several developers at Bungie about the making of Kel's Fall, its headlining shotgun, the impact of the latest narrative beats, and the surprising intricacy of the playable Scorn organ. At the core of its vampire keep. Is that what we're calling it? The Scorgan? I didn't catch that till just now. We also discussed community sentiment, player fatigue, live service challenges, and the catch-22 of time-gating content. Kel's Fall isn't the biggest exotic mission ever, but it is a stylish and deceptively layered space with enough secrets to hopefully keep us invested a little bit. So, I agree with everything that's said so far. I'm excited to see us tap into all of these different topics. Got Destiny's Vampire. Bungie wanted to do something with vampires for a while. With Kel's Fall, that vision comes across with Castlevania and Splatterhouse Flare. Forsaken's Fickrel acting as our Dracula, and the Barons returning for surely one last act. Now, some people will criticize it being recycled content, and while that might be true, I think that obviously they all tie together, I think that Barons and Fickrel, it makes sense for them to go out together. Magic Mirrors, Hidden Doors, and Undead Hordes complete the look with a huge spiral staircase for good measure. Activity designer Willie Chang says they wanted to integrate the illusion and deception baked into vampire tropes and legends, turning away from the definitely well-explored blood and stakes and imagining things like the mission's alternative mirror world and a rogues gallery of devious allies. I mean, we did kind of have like a stake, like we stuck him in the heart with a stake. It was the, I forget what it was, the green vial that we stuck him in the heart with, right? So it's kind of like we stuck a stake in his heart, right? Like they kind of tapped into that a little bit. We have one of Fickrel's trusty rogues, the Trickster, has a chance to appear in other boss encounters. One of the ways Bungie wanted to add greater variance to Kel's Fall, alongside things like random razors tied to puzzles. the heck? We're looking for ways to add variety without just, I misread that for a second, I swear. Building a ton of content that is linear. Chang says, so we're looking for these different ways to build permutations into each run so that the second, third time that you go through the basement dungeon area, you're not always looking for the same stuff. That sort of stuff is more sustainable to build. I'm a big fan of this. I think that when you do repeatable content, if you want people to do an activity, you know, however many times, 20 times, 40 times, whatever it is that they're going to have to do to acquire that loot, make it interesting, make some small variables, you know, even simple things like daytime, nighttime, you know, a shift in players or enemy behavior, stuff like that is very cool. I think it's doing more than what we've done in the past. Kisco continues, supporting those replay roles week over week. Episode 2 does not have the time gating like you mentioned, and so the player can really play at their own leisure, which, to be fair, means that everyone just kind of played it and got it all done in one day, and it's meant to stretch across 4 weeks. So that's like, leaves us like, now what do we do? The value here, reiterates, is the ability to take things as you want and dip into more activities into a session. When we're thinking about how we support this new paradigm, I think it's through variety. And we've learned lessons from previous episodes and seasons as well. I think we're applying that through the variety and surprises in the exotic mission that we're doing now. All right, what type of variety are we talking about here? A recurring theme with this episode and the rollout of Kel's Fall has been Bungie's decision to do away with time gating to see how it feels. This was a later pivot in the episode 2 plans, and we've seen the good and bad of it. We are free to eat the whole cake at once, but inevitably there's a chorus of what? Or wait, that's it? When we run out of cake in one sitting, sometimes quite abruptly. This is true of the episode model itself to some extent too. Now, I have some beef with this already. So previously they tried to time gate these new narratives they're doing, but it's such tiny bite-sized narratives. It was like you'd log in and do like the tiniest, most minuscule mission that everyone was like, you got to stop time gating this crap. Like, you can't just have us log in on Tuesday, do something that takes like no time at all, and then just we gotta wait 7 days to find out the next thing we got to do. And so they're like, all right, I guess we'll just give it to you all at once. The problem is that in doing that, like, everyone just gets it done in like a couple of hours, you know? And so the amount of effort you're putting into these narratives is just not enough. Like, there's just not enough content here to sink your teeth into. Even if stretching it out and time gating it wasn't really the problem. It's the amount of content that's the problem. The amount of story, the amount of narrative, that's the problem. It's such a small amount. It's so dry and so very easily used up. So I think that's really the issue. I have no issue with it being time gated. In fact, I would be a big fan of it being time gated if every week you got there was so much narrative that you had to go through that it was like, wow, like, I'm glad we can like pace this out a little bit, you know? But it's not like that. It's the opposite. It's like there's just nothing if you time gate it. The challenging thing with the new model is players have clear expectations about what things were in the past terms of how they interact with the vendors. Or what the pacing of the story is, or the amount of content. Yes, so we're referencing what we get now comparative to what we've had in the past. And they said, and with the episodic model, there's Act 1, it's all focused around Onslaught. Act 2 is focused around Tomb of Elders. Act 3 is focused around the exotic. And I think some players are going to appreciate that, and others are going to feel like they have smaller chunks to focus on initially versus having them all to play with later. Those are some things that we're going to have to take a look at and be like, is this the right model? What are the tweaks we can make to this going forward? I think live service gameplay models are literally one of the hardest challenges. They are a hard challenge, but also, I mean, you keep just pouring in more creative juice. You keep building on stuff, you know? I think that you already have the foundation laid. You've already done the hard work, which is getting people interested in your game, generating millions of dollars in revenue every month, generating billions of dollars of value to your company, right? You've done the real hard part, you know? Just build your team up and make a good narrative that has lots of plot twists, lots of, you know, just more stuff to do every week that you log in the game. I think you can look out in the broader game industry right now, and it's rough out there. I really feel a lot for a lot of things that are going on in the games industry. That's something that's going to be one of our biggest challenges. I mean, I guess there's some sentiment to that. I think that the games industry got kind of bloated after the pandemic, and now we're kind of experiencing, you know, some regression, right, from the people gaming. Like, popularity of gaming is maybe going down a little bit, but overall this isn't really, I don't know, it just feels like a sad sentiment, like, oh, gaming's so down right now, I feel bad for everyone, you know, the reason why we're sucking so bad right now. It's like, the game doesn't have to suck, and the narrative does not have to suck. Like, you can do a lot better. Like, and I don't think this narrative did suck, I just thought it was really, really short for 4 weeks. That's the right way to give players what they want and let them have agency experience, while also finding out what we're saying about the sustainable path forward. You can't have any part of the game bear all the weight of someone's engagement, Farnsworth continues. If everyone's time is only focused on the episode and not on playing the core game or other aspects of the release, they're going to feel like they're going to eat everything and be done. So they're getting at, like, you need the story to say, oh, you got to go jump into Crucible, play 3 games, and then you got to go do this. You got to jump into Gambit. You got to jump into Strikes. You got to, you know, get people forcibly pushing them around into all the different activities to boost the population numbers and keep the engagement, the play session time up, which artificially is good, right? Like, does keep play session time up, and it does keep you doing more. But we've gotten pretty exhausted with that. You know what I'm saying? If I have to go around and do stuff, it turns into chores. So they need to find a system where, yeah, we get people into these other playlists, but not in a chore-like way. You want to be excited about it. You know, you want to be interested in what it is, that the reason why you have to go play those 3 Crucible games, or whatever it may be, whatever they're trying to get you to go do. So I know going forward, we're going to be investing in as many areas of the game as we can to make sure that players have something to do for each mood that they're in, whether they want to engage with the story, or they want to engage with an exotic mission, or they want to play the core game, or they want to play PvP. Interesting. I wonder what that means. It's a very vague statement, but I wonder what that means. And I think it's the challenge, making sure that if players feel they've gobbled up everything somewhere, they've got something else to hop over to. That is a really good sentiment. That is actually a good vision in my mind for Destiny, because sometimes you kind of take something to the very end, like you've done everything in an activity. Like, say for example, we'll take Salvation's Edge, right, the most recent raid in the game. Well, once you've unlocked all of the weapons and you've, like, crafted them, or you've gotten all of the adepts, right, and you got all the armor that you want, then you're like, and you got the exotic obviously, then you're like, all right, well, now what? You know, like, I've done everything in this raid, I'm good doing this, now I want to go do something else. And so there should be something else for you, you know, dungeons, strikes, Crucible stuff, whatever it may be. There should be an endless supply of things, so that way you can continue to play the game and keep the population numbers up. I would also like to add that this, in some ways, is a good problem to have. Narrative, Lee Jerome, Verna chats, because this is only a problem if your cake tastes good, right? Your cake is trash, nobody wants to eat it, and it's not a discussion at all. Now, pretty funny for him to say that, given the current status of the game right now, right? Right now, people would say Destiny 2 overall is a trash cake, and people aren't playing it right now. People are just, like, the population numbers are really low. I know that he was referencing this in regards to specifically the narrative decisions for Act 3 and how it began, how it had ended things with Aramis, Mithrax, all of that, right? And so people are talking about, you know, it was short, and they did enjoy the story overall, but it was maybe a little too short. So it's almost a good problem to have. So I get what he means by that, but he almost shot himself in the foot there a little bit with that statement. For all the doom and gloom going around, not entirely undeservedly, I think the cake is very much not trash. I agree too. You know, I think that we criticize Destiny 2 pretty harshly, but I don't think it's trash. I've become an even more hardcore casual Destiny 2 player since the final shape. I log in when there's new stuff to do or collect, or when my friends want to do a dungeon or raid or GM, and I let the game chill otherwise. Playing other games remains the ultimate Destiny 2 hack. True, and that's why I'm playing Warframe lately. And the new stuff is generally fun when it's new. On the narrative side, with Kel's Fall, putting a bow on this episode, Vernon says, our only goal is to have an act that is emotionally resonant, that does justice to the world and the characters, and does right by their character arcs. Gotcha. On that front, I look forward to reading the responses on the handling of Aramis, where resolution, anticipated since Beyond Light of 2020, was more of a redemption arc than I ever expected. Speaking of, there is a greater push for finality as Destiny 2 gears up for its next expansion. which is looking to be key. Yeah, what did you think about Aramis's story arc? I think that was her redemption arc was one that was a bit of criticism from a lot of people. People thinking that Aramis didn't deserve to have a redemption arc. And it seems like Destiny 2, they have like everyone is redeemable, you know, has a redeemable quality to them. Whereas maybe some villains, maybe some bad people don't have that quality. And that can make a kind of a more darker narrative, but Destiny 2 is kind of maybe a little takes the Disney route, I suppose. It was our desire to leave all of the characters pretty settled at the end of this episode, Vernich says. We had another hanging thread with Mithrax and the influence of Nezrak's curse on him, which plays big into the season, and then his relationship with both Ido, his daughter, and then also with Aramis, who has a different idea of Elixni unity, of Elixni nationalism than Mithrax does. And so we really wanted to leave Mithrax, Fikrul, and Aramis in a kind of settled place, that we didn't have those threads flapping in the wind anymore, as we turn our attention to some really exciting, unnamed things in the future. The unnamed things, why? Just give us a taste of Frontiers, Bungie, please. There's always a tension between finding a satisfying button or bow to put on a storyline, and leaving oneself room to grow, leaving threads to pick up later on down the road, he adds. Every time we do any single mission, every time we write any script, we're always asking ourselves, where do we want to leave the player in relation to the character? And sometimes we look back, and I think we might wish that we had settled some things that we left open, and then other times we wish that we had left ourselves a little more room to maneuver. Alright. And we got the Skorgan here. And as you replay the Kel's Fall and finish these character arcs, you'll find some Skorgan music notes scrawled on the walls. These may end up being bigger lure for some players than the act finale. Technical designer and Skorgan mastermind Ashley Baker explains that the castle-centric instrument, size and majesty, crystallized by a fateful piece of concept art, is slowly repaired run over run. Players discover new notes and pipes are restored by some mystery characters scurrying around the castle. So if you're able to blast through the entire Act 3 story day 1, you'll have a fully fixed organ, she says. Yeah, you just do the mission. It has like 3 different variants on it, and then it fixes the organ. You know, most people probably get that done the first day. I love when games make me bust out some pen and paper and then get the feeling like the Skorgan will do that. Yeah, I definitely wrote down some notes. I was like, all right, we saw this, we saw that. Write it down, you know, it looks like a queue. What is that? What does this one look like? You're trying to find the notes in different locations and where are those and where they are in locations, and the order that they're in matches the order of the melody that can be played on the Skorgan, Baker adds. Some melodies may unlock secret passages while others might screw you over, and then there's some extra secret ones for our music savvy players. If they can figure those out, they might find a couple extra reactions. Yep, we found all the hidden ones. At least 8 so far. The Skorgan has a full octave for Guardians to play, which notes meticulously concocted over a dozen sound layers. Senior music editor Adam Caliban tells me that these sounds include a PVC trombone, a pipe organ from Sweden, light bulbs, sonar pings, and even some percussion from a Destiny 1 track dating back to the House of Wolves. The broken notes throw in an antique car horn and a busted cello. You'll hear Skorgan notes throughout the episode 2 score. If you listen for them, a little extra juice, that helps sell that vampire vibe, Caliban says. Baker expects and hopes to see players use the full-fledged instrument to write and play their own songs, enabling that kind of user-generated content that was central to the Skorgan's design, to the point that music theory and notation was woven into the Skorn runes. Nice. Making it replayable. We are of course going to be playing through Kel's Fall several times to fully max out Slayer's Fang and polish off the story beats. It's the cornerstone of Act 3. Yet before it was even released, I saw some players expressing exhaustion over another mission grind loop. Alright guys, look, you can't be complaining about this. This is something to do in the game. You got a new exotic, we gotta unlock the stuff. Playing the mission a few times through is not the worst thing ever. There's valid criticism to be made of this delivery, but some Destiny 2 players truly seem to hate having to play Destiny 2. That's what I'm talking about. Alright, listen, if you're so salty that playing a brand new mission a couple times to unlock all the things has got you that mad, then you know you're not having fun playing Destiny 2. You gotta go play something else. Varied hazards and puzzles can help, but since I hadn't played the mission yet, I wanted to learn more about how Bungie is building activities to suit multiple playthroughs, especially in the context of the untimed gated era we're currently in. Kisco points to the addition of exotic missions to the player journey and how this affected their view of what these missions looks like. It's this delicate balance of creating something that's not too hard, but still holds on to the core essence of what players expect out of exotic missions, he says. To be fair, that is true. Exotic missions in the hierarchy of difficulty are in the mid-range, right? You've got your master raids at the very top. You've got dungeons, right? Or you got contest raids, I should say. Contest raids, I guess contest dungeons now. And then you've got your master difficulty of raids. And then from there on, exotic missions are somewhere in the middle, floating in there. They're relatively difficult, but they're not like crazy, you know? There's not really anyone that's been so difficult that people can't beat it, you know? And you could look back way long ago and look at like the Whisper mission. It was really difficult, but that's so long ago now that it's very weird to compare that era to the modern era with the sandbox and everything that's changed, you know? With Kel's Fall being the tentpole for this act, Kisco says Bungie paid special attention to how follow-up runs feel while trying to balance hardcore and casual play patterns. I didn't mind running this a bunch of times. I actually had fun doing it. Kel's Fall has some depth, but for pure combat, it is markedly easier than the likes of the Whisper 0-hour missions, especially in the boss fights. Okay. But Kisco says they're open to making demanding missions like those again. I wouldn't say anything is off the table, he affirms. And I know that in a game like this, variety is amazing. We never want to push something like the idea of a Whisper off of the table for those players who enjoy it. We did Hawk Moon, and then it was like, all right, let's bring Presage in, and we brought the version with the timer back in. Some people really liked it, some people don't, and that's okay. Yeah, the timed missions, you know what I'm talking about. The timed exotic missions, that's a whole nother level of difficulty. You're rushing through, you're not going to make it the first time because you're inefficient in your ability to find the mechanics, clear bosses, things like that. And so the time missions are way more difficult. They're not doing those as much anymore. And honestly, I'm okay with that because I don't think that everything in this game needs to be challenging. I know a lot of people, they say, oh, Lucky, you're an elitist. You enjoy contest raids. You enjoy contest dungeons even. And they say you're elitist for that. I enjoy that stuff. I enjoy the challenge. Not everything in the game needs to be a ball-busting challenge, though. I think we can leave exotic missions in that kind of middle space where, yeah, there's some challenge to them, but really, you know, you're going to beat it and you're going to get the exotic, and it's kind of fun and more for the experience, you know? I don't think that we need to make a contest mode raid, a contest mode dungeon, contest mode exotic missions, contest mode strikes, contest mode patrols, you know? It's like, we don't need to do all of that. Right? We can leave some things casual. Sometimes we're going to cater to certain audiences more than others, and if that's not your cup of tea, that's fine, because the next release will probably have something more aligned to them. So all that stuff's on the table, and we have a lot of vehicles to deliver those. It's not just the episodes or the different acts within the episodes. We also have our future stuff that we're really excited about in Frontiers. Say more, please. That's all I want. Frontiers information. But unfortunately, that's all we get. There's a little tiny tease there. And that's a wrap on this one, though. Let me know your thoughts about Act 3, about its narrative conclusion. Were you satisfied, or did you feel like it kind of missed the mark? I'll be reading your comments down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.